Good evening. On Vintage Motocross Q&A tonight, we've got a 1970 Yamaha DT250 frame repairs with Gordon McCaffer. A very, very interesting video coming up. Roy is here with tips from the Honda team. You don't want to miss this. Jeff Kokoski, he's here too with key and carburetor information. We've got trivia, a lot of giveaways, and much, much more coming up on Vintage Motocross Q&A.
Hi, I'm Marty Tripes. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Abbate, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. Don't forget to share the show, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Please share the show. We'll have trivia a little bit later and a lot of giveaways as well. I want to thank our sponsor, Preston Petty Products, for being a long-term supporter of the show. Visit them online at PrestonPettyProducts.com. They are the sponsor of the Moto Showcase. In the Moto Showcase tonight, we take a look at a 1970 Yamaha DT1. And it's kind of an interesting story. I'll share it with you in just a second. First, let's get a look at the bike itself. Here it is right here. There it is, a nice little 250. And this wasn't a full restoration by me, but there's an interesting story that went along with it, and I would like to share that with you right now, if that is at all possible. So let's cut to our new video system, and we'll take a look at this Yamaha DT. All right, and here it is, Moto Showcase. This Yamaha DT is a series of motorcycles and mopeds that were produced by Yamaha in the early or late 1960s. They were from 50cc to 400cc. The first DT1 was released in '68. It quickly sold out, 12,000 units. At that time, there were only a few specialty bikes out there, like Bultaco, Yamaha, and Husqvarna. Now, this bike here came to me in my shop, and I very seldom do mechanical work for outsiders. It said to have a transmission problem, but it didn't. It had two broken idler gears, and that was all that was wrong with it, so to speak. If you look closely at this invoice, you'll see that it went to a dealer, and for $855, they did the fork seals and did a carburetor rebuild, but they never got it started. I took the pipe off first thing, and, well, as you could see, it was loaded with oil and gas. I figured it had to have the cases split, so we started with taking off the cylinder. We got that gas and oil out of the pipe, and we got things cleaned up. I got the gears for the primary, for the idler gears. We de-blasted the head, we de-blasted the cylinder. We had it freshly honed as well. I put a nice finish on it, the way it usually came from the factory, where we polished off the ends of the fins. You can see it right here. I think it looks pretty good. We bought a new piston, new rings, and we reassembled the bike. And yeah, these were real popular, and they were modified for scrambles back then. It's what they called. We put the bike back together, we polished the cases, rebuilt the carburetor, checked all the wiring. I know we had to do some ignition work on it as well. It wasn't anything that serious. Anyway, it came out really, really nicely, and the bike, well, it's still running today. I still hear from the customer every once in a while. He uses it on weekends to mosey around here in Northern California. There it is, the 1970 Yamaha DT250, probably one of my only retail mechanical repairs that I've actually ever done. And that's it for the Moto Showcase for this week. Sue, how you doing over there?
I'm good.
Yeah? You got some giveaways for tonight?
I do.
What are you doing? What are you giving away?
I have some octane boost.
Right?
For CD oil.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And I have that great mud scraper.
Yeah.
And I have that nice water bottle on the track.
There you go.
Awesome.
Really great in the summertime. So we got that. We got some other stuff as well that we'll be giving away a little bit later on in the show. I want to thank all of our sponsors who help us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A, from Full Circle Racing to Armor Motion Pro, of course, the International Motocross Museum, Legend Heroes, and all you guys at home who go for that $49.95 special. For 90 days, you get your name up on the board. You get a t-shirt of your choice, and it's just a great way to support Vintage Motocross Q&A. Now, Roy has come up with a segment for us this week, and it's, well, we usually run it in the next time try this segment. Roy's video is very, very informative, not always about the mechanical end of it, but a lot of technical end of it in other ways as well. So it's a little bit of a long video. Roy suggested that I run half this week, half next week. Let's see how it goes. Let's get the first half on and see what Roy has brought us this week.
Hello, I'm Roy Vanderveur, and welcome to my two-stroke pro shop. Today, we're going to take a retrospective trip back to an ad from a 1983 Cycle News in which Bel-Ray gives us tips on how to race prep your MX machine. As I was going through this old issue of Cycle News, I came across this ad and I thought, man, all of the advice that's in this ad is relevant right up till today, and it's all good stuff, and we get to hear from 5 or 6 factory mechanics off of Team Honda. And as we go through each segment, I'll mention who the mechanics are. And I've got my laptop here with me because trying to reproduce this in print just ended up with really small text that I can't read, and it's blurry. So here we go. We've got 5 tips, 6 tips on how to race prep your motocross bike. Okay, this is number 1 in a series of papers developed by Bel-Ray to help analyze your bike's preparation and improve your performance. The mechanics at Team Honda have made a science out of setting up a bike. Their collective efforts generated 6 championships and countless race wins in 1982. Here's a few of their tech tips. Here we go. First thing up, forks. Perfect adjustment is reached when forks deliver maximum travel and bottom just a hair on the hardest drop-off. To achieve this, start with the manufacturer's recommended quantity and viscosity of oil, and then adjust to match the riding conditions. Viscosity can be adjusted by blending to achieve the desired weight. Fluid quantity controls travel. Decrease the quantity for more travel, increase to reduce bottoming. The weight of fluid adjusts the damping. The higher the weight, the greater the damping, and the slower the forks will travel. All true. This was from Steve Carter, who was Danny Magoo Chandler's mechanic. 1982 World Trophy and Motocross the Nations champion. And for a few weekends, Danny Chandler was the fastest guy on the planet. No questions asked. There's a few things in this text that, as I read them, they're a little confusing. I don't want to say misleading, but I'm going to be doing a video in the near future talking about fork oil viscosity, and blending fork oil. And we're gonna learn some new vocabulary words when we do that. I'm going to educate you on kinematic viscosity and diffusivity of momentum. It's good stuff, but I got to get back to this ad. I'm looking forward to doing that, especially the part about blending oils. Let me just blow this up a little bit. Then part 2, we go to the transmission, and there's some key points in here that I really like. There's multiple weights of transmission oil, but not too many people really know or understand why you would want to use light, medium, or heavy. So we'll get there. Part 2, transmission. I choose SAE 80 for 80 through 125 machines and SAE 85 weight for 250 and open bikes, and fill to the manufacturer's recommended quantity. I also change the oil after every moto. You probably won't have to, but remember that smaller bikes like 125s and 80s abuse the clutch a lot more and need to have their transmission oil changed more frequently. Also use a gear oil, not a motor oil. The additive package differs for better protection. And that came from Cliff White, 1982 Motocross the Nation's team mechanic. This crosses over into another video that I would like to do, in which we're going to talk about a few things, primarily the high cost of a low price. It's never ending. People choose the lubricant brands based on what the cost of the product is, and somehow they think if it's the cheapest, well, then that must be the best. And that's some backwards thinking right there. And when we get to that video, we can discuss that. But again, we got to get back to this ad here. There's lots of good stuff. So the difference that I play to with what viscosity oil to use in a gearbox, in a 125 or an 80, you're always going to want to use a light viscosity so that the clutch hooks up right away. If you've got a heavier hitting bike like a 250 or a 500, the thicker fluid in milliseconds delays the engagement of the clutch to provide just a little bit of cushion. In other words, there might be just a tiny bit of slip built into that. I'm talking about half a revolution, not much at all. And lighter viscosity oils have a higher viscosity index rating, which means the drop off in viscosity from heat is minimized. So if you know you're going to be running a clutch really hot, if you're a chronic clutch abuser, you're going to want to stick with a light viscosity oil, because heavier viscosities are going to suffer a lot more when the temperatures go up. So great advice from Cliff White. Let's move over here to part 3, the air filter. To prepare the air filter, pour foam filter oil on the element and saturate complete. That's really key. Then wring it out completely. Well, wringing out is a bad way to do it, but be careful, okay? If you twist it too hard, you'll tear the seams. You really want to squeeze it out. Then line the edge of the air filter with clean grease to ensure a perfect seal and prevent dirt from slipping around the edge. And we got that from Paul Turner, Team Honda R&D mechanic. Now let's talk about number 4, the chain. Keep the chain adjusted. Make sure the head of the master link is pointed in the direction of travel so that rocks can't knock it off. And lube the chain to protect it. Spray chain lube on the sprocket contact side of the chain, and 1 complete revolution for the inner and the outer sides of the rollers. Do not over lube. This could cause dirt to collect and lube to fling off. And our chain tips are courtesy of Eric Krippa, multi-time national and the nation's MX champion mechanic, currently Steve Martin's mechanic. Next up, we have part 5. The Honda factory has tested 2-cycle oils and determined that MC1 Plus is the best. So I don't even choose brands. I follow their recommendations and test, determine my own mixing ratios. Generally, I run 32 to 40 to 1 in 125s, 40 to 50 to 1 in 250s, and 50 to 70 to 1 in open bikes. Average riders should run the leaner ratios. More experienced riders, richer. You can check your ratios by reading the plug. Since MP1 Plus is clean burning, the plug should be a light gray. Last and very importantly, be sure to mix the gas and oil together thoroughly. And we got that from Chris Haynes, mechanic for Daryl Schultz. Can't say enough good things about Daryl Schultz and the rides that he put in, both for Suzuki and Honda throughout the early 80s. I have in queue a video to talk about these ratios, and it's a universal question on the internet. I have an 85 KX 125, what ratio should I run? And that's an impossible question to answer without knowing a lot of other variables. So in that video, when we get there, I want to talk about why running different ratios for different displacement engines is absolutely the right thing to do, and how and why it's very safe to do that. Okay, next up we've got the brakes. Prep the brakes by cleaning the shoes with contact cleaner. Next, grease the cams and their pivot points with assembly lube. Then lube the cables with 6-in-1. And excuse me while I move this around here. And since you've got the can of 6-in-1 in your hand, use some on the Kickstarter pivot to make sure it doesn't lock up with dirt and grit. Also, after washing, spray the entire bike with 6-in-1, then wipe dry. This keeps the machine looking new and prevents corrosion. And that tip came directly from Jim Felt, multi-time national championship mechanic for none other than our buddy Johnny O'Mara. That's why his bikes always look so good. A little contact cleaner on the carburetor and ignition removes all the dirt and grime and helps assure you trouble-free performance. Again, from Jim Felt. So in conclusion, these tips from Bel-Ray, they're all very good, and no matter what oil you use, if you follow the advice that's been offered up by these factory Honda mechanics, you can be assured that you're at least going to be using your lubricants in an appropriate way. Some of the biggest problems that people run into is when they use stuff off script, if you will. Certain lubricants are designed to do certain things, certain cleaners are designed to do certain things, and when you get too far away from center, it can start to have an adverse effect on how things work. And again, that kind of gets into the high cost of low price. When you choose based on price, you're making a compromise somewhere. When you use products by brands that are infused into the industry, it's a good decision. And we're going to get deeper into that in other videos. This ad has given me some great fodder for discussion in the future about suspension fluids and about two-cycle oils and the proper application of both. So I really enjoyed that. If you'd like to have a copy of this ad all for yourself, you can find it in the March 16th of 1983 edition of Cycle News.
I want to thank Roy Vanderveer from New Jersey, the great Pennsylvania. Actually, I know him from New Jersey, but I do want to thank Roy Vanderveer for that excellent segment. In fact, Roy wrote me a note that said it's 14 minutes long. If it's too long, do 7 minutes this week and 7 minutes next week. I wouldn't cut that short for all the tea in China. I just thought it was a great segment. Thank you, Roy Vanderveer. And I want to thank Lisa Carter from CD Power for joining us tonight. CD Power, Martinez, California. Lisa Carter, thank you for joining us. Coming up next, we've got something from Gordon McCaffer, and it's about a frame repair. And we got this question the week before last. I couldn't get it on last week because I wanted to be sure that I had the proper answer and we give the right information here. But it came from Phil Liberty, and the question was, or the statement was, when working on a 1974 Honda CR125 frame that has the shocks moved up, what is the best chromoly and tube size to do the repair for small frame tubing? Well, first of all, Phil, let's talk about what chromoly is and what it may not be, and why it's important and why so many frames are made of chromoly. Okay, and there's a little bit of a blurb here on that. What chromoly steel, sometimes called chromo or chromoly, it's a group of low alloy steels containing chromium and molybdenum, known for its high strength to weight ratio, excellent durability, and heat treatability. Primarily identified as AISI 41XX series, like 4130 or 4140. It's stronger than standard 1020 steel. It's easy to weld and used in high-stress applications such as bike frames, aerospace parts, race car roll bars. Now, if it's good enough for that, for roll cages, I think it would be really, really great to have something like that, your motorcycle frame to be built with that. Now, the first guy I ever met at a motocross race was Gordon McCaffer way back in 1999. He was the tech inspector that day in Monticello, New York. We have been friends ever since. He was a welder even long before that. So I posed this question to Gordon, and he came on with me earlier today. And let's see what Gordon has to say about frame repairs and sort of about what Phil Liberty was talking about as well. Gordon, take it away. Here we go. Gordon McCaffer. Thanks for joining me today on Vintage Motocross Q&A.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. I know you've been a welder for a better part of your life. You've seen a lot of motorcycle frames as well because you're a vintage motocross enthusiast. So I thought we would come on here and just discuss a few things quickly about a previous question. And you can give your point of view on how you would approach the repair or what you think is best. So let's just base it on that because we can't tell everybody how to weld and all the tricks and things that 40 years or 50 years of experience could give someone. So let's just hop into this one first. Here's something we see a lot: bent frame loops on vintage bikes. Now, what do you do in a situation like that, Gordon?
Well, part of the problem there, Joe, is I think it would depend if the tubing got kinked or not. Okay.
Right.
If you're lucky enough where it got bent slightly, but not kinked,
yeah,
you may be able to heat it up and straighten it. Okay. On a frame loop. Okay. You know, it's a possibility. If the tubing got kinked, there's not really a lot of saving that, in my opinion.
Okay.
You know, I would say in that situation, you know, if it's kinked and you're concerned about the cosmetics, like if it's a restoration or something, you're probably going to be cutting that off and replacing it. Would be your best angle of attack there.
Okay. Now, you sent me some pictures of a recent repair that you made, and I want to get into dented down tubes in a minute or two, but let's go with the first set of pictures that you sent me, and we could talk a little bit more about that and how you made this repair. What actually happened here?
All right, Joe. So that is a 1979 RM400 frame.
Okay.
And I didn't really know this at the time because that was the first one of those that I repaired. But apparently, that's the rear. We're looking at it upside down, but that's the rear motor mount.
Right.
The rear lower motor mount, like closer to the swing arm. And apparently those are known for braking. Okay.
Okay.
So this one here was brought to me by a guy that happens to also be an excellent machinist. He has done machine work for me before. And so he races it. It's a race bike. So I repair. He brought that to me, and he was here while I did the repair, so he kind of helped, hold the frames steady and stuff while I'm welding it and whatnot. But on repairs like that, Joe, I always TIG weld those kind of things, okay?
Right.
Because, there's a lot of, different welding processes that you could use, you could MIG it, you could stick weld it, etc. But I prefer TIG for generally for any motorcycle frame repair, because,
Right.
when I was a kid, the old time welders used to say TIG was the Cadillac of welding, okay? Highest quality weld process of the common processes, where you really have the most control over the weld, okay, with a TIG. So that's what I do. It gives you the best quality. Now that particular repair, 79 RM400, I'm told, is chromoly. Japanese chromoly, which may or may not be the same as American chromoly quality wise. We don't know. Yeah. But anyway, if you look at the picture, you notice we put a little sleeve inside.
I'm going to get to that. In fact, I want to make sure I know I have the pictures in the right order. But here's the sleeve. So in other words, Gordon, when somebody's making a quality repair, you're not going to just put those two pieces back together like a little jigsaw puzzle and run a bead around there. You want to do something like this. But the question I have is, of course, where do you get a sleeve that proper size?
Well, that's a great question. Okay. So in some of these instances, because, there's so many different sizes of frame tubing, it's good to know a machinist or two, because sometimes you have to have these things made. Okay. And you want like a really close fit, not sloppy. It's got to be like a close tolerance fit up, so it slides together nice. And then that will strengthen the joint. That joint will be stronger than it was originally from the factory, if you do it properly like that. Now, in this particular case, Joe, that sleeve was actually sourced from another Suzuki RM frame. Okay. It was an RM 125. And that tube happened to be the exact correct diameter, outside diameter, as what we needed. It just fit perfectly inside that other tube. So, and that, the fact that we're using, two different tubes from two different Suzukis,
right?
Chances are that that's compatible steel.
That was my next question, Gordon, is, so if a guy is going out there who may be watching the show and has a repair that he has to make similar to that, he wants to have a conversation with the welder, and he wants to know what he's talking about as far as putting a sleeve in there. But what about comparable metal? In other words, if he's got a chromoly frame, will a mild steel sleeve work?
In my opinion, yes, it would. Okay. It would. I have welded mild steel. You can weld mild steel to chromoly steel.
Okay.
It's generally not a problem. Okay. But again, in this case, he brought me the parts. He had it all ready, it was prepped and ready to go when he brought it. And I know that inner tube came from an RM 125 frame. And that bike, since we did that repair, has been raced with no issues.
Yeah.
So
I also want to talk about, and this is like, how can I say it? It may be one of those situations that may occur with someone, it may not. Let's say someone has a bent frame rail, like we see here on this bike right here. In other words, the rail going down. You have the shock mount, you have a rail going down. Should someone harvest a piece from another frame, or do they go out and order that same chromoly in that diameter? What's best?
You can do either. You can. I have made one good frame from two bad frames where, one frame had a good front and the other, frame, say the seat loop or whatever. You can make a good frame out of 2 frames. Okay.
Okay.
It does help if you have a frame jig to hold everything in alignment. Okay.
Right.
And the frame jigs are actually not that expensive. There's kits you can buy online that comes with all the hardware. You just supply you supply the steel, like the square pipe or tubing, whatever, but it comes with all the fixtures that you need to make a frame jig. And those are very handy because, you know, the thing is, if you're going to take like the front half of one frame and the back half of another frame and splice them together, that certainly is done a lot. But you want to make sure everything's in alignment. Your steering head,
sure.
You know,
Especially if it's a street bike.
Well, yeah, because, you know, the higher speeds, but, you know, like even race bikes, I mean, you want to have your steering head in a line, say, you know, with your swing arm pivot, and just everything's all in alignment. Kosher,
I got you.
But so, you know, there are places online where you can order chromoly tubing, small amounts, different diameters, different wall thicknesses, whatever you want, pretty much, you know. Now, you know, probably if it's a Japanese frame or, you know, European bike frame or whatever, you know, they could have been spec'd in a metric diameter, you know, originally, you know, from the factory.
Interesting.
But you probably could get something really close. You know what I mean? In you call it an American or an SAE, you know, size tube. You know, the interesting thing to know about tubing, Joe, is tubing is measured 2 ways: by the outside diameter, the OD, right? Yeah. And the wall thickness. That's the 2 measurements you would want to specify if you were ordering it. Okay. So yes, you know, there is, like I said, if you just Google chromoly tubing, you'll come up with a bunch of suppliers.
Okay.
And they will ship you small amounts. You know, if you needed a couple of feet, let's say, you know, you can do that.
How much money would a couple of feet of chromoly be?
You know, Joe, I'm going to tell you, the steel market is very volatile. So like when you buy steel, like I do other things besides motorcycle stuff.
Yes.
And when I call my steel supplier to get a quote, that quote's only good for a certain amount of days because it's actually been going up quite a bit lately. So I'd hesitate to quote what a piece of chromoly would cost.
Well,
you know,
let's do this, Gordon. I need 2 feet to repair a frame. Is it $50 or is it $100? How much can it vary over a month?
Yeah. Joe, how
much is it today?
I have no clue. I'd have to look. You know,
all right. I get you.
You know, I just don't want, I don't want to say, hey, it's this much, because, you know, somebody's going to go online and check me out, you know?
And you never know, 5 years from now, I mean, I'm just using round numbers. Let's say 2 feet is $50. You know, 2 years from now, 3 years from now,
I would guess probably not 50. I'm going to guess less than 50.
But I'm saying 2 years from now, it might be 150. Let's get back to the repair you've made here. And here's the sleeve, and you've got it together there. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking at here. I see the piece back together, but what are you holding in your fingers there?
Okay, so that piece there is another piece cut out of a piece of chromoly tubing from a bike frame. That was something that the owner of this frame, you can see that same piece welded on right there. He just wanted to put some reinforcement, kind of like a bash plate, to protect that tube. So that long, you know, semicircular piece, right there that he's holding in his hand, that was welded on after the 2 cracks were repaired. Okay, right. We welded that piece on the bottom just as protection you know, bikes can bottom out on stuff.
I got you.
Yeah.
Now, Gordon, what's going on here? This looks like a different part of the frame, is it?
No, that's just the other side. That's one side of that motor mount.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he he coped or fish-eyed the end of that tube so it would fit up against the tube inside there.
And when you say fish-eyed, you're talking about?
Yeah, the little cope so that's, so
Right.
it fits up against the curvature of the other tube.
Right. Like we see those nice, neat little fish eyes or cutouts or whatever you want to call them on.
Yep.
Your more expensive bicycles.
That's one side of that motor mount.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. We're going to take a little break right now. We're going to be back with the rest of Gordon's video a little bit later on in the show, a little bit toward the end. It's very, very interesting. I don't want to bring it into next week, but I just also want to clarify something. Roy's video was fantastic. So is Gordon's. We will get back to the Gordon video a little bit later on in the show, but both will be on the Vintage Motocross Q&A page in their entirety tomorrow. At the beginning of the Did You Know segment, I forgot to mention that Gordon McCaffer is the sponsor of the Here's the Problem segment. Of course, he makes those great work stands, and there's his phone number right there on the bottom of the page. We are going to take a commercial break. We will be back with more Vintage Motocross Q&A right after this message.
Hi, you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. We'll be right back.
We gotta pray, Rick. We gotta
after this
pray.
prayer.
Gordon McCaffer work stands are available from Gordon. His number is 315-729-8415. Gordon McCaffer. You heard him, and you heard how knowledgeable he is about welding. You know what time it is, Susie? My favorite time of the show.
Trivia.
That's right. Trivia is here, and we will again today be giving away one of the very few posters we have left, 18 by 24 cover photo of Tony DiStefano and Jimmy Weiner. This is from Racer X back in 2004. This is a call-in contest only. Call-in contest only. The phone number is 925-784-2195. That's 925-784-2195. If you're watching this show at any other time other than at 5:38 on Wednesday, April 22nd, don't call me. People call all the time when they watch the show afterward, okay? Don't call me. 925-784-2195. Scantily clad operators are standing by waiting for your call. And here is the trivia contest question. This did not end well. It is at Hawkstone Park, 1966. The CZ belongs to Dave Bickers. Who's pushing the bike? Who is pushing Dave Bickers' bike? That is tonight's trivia question. Call in now, 925-784-2195. Okay? Let's move on. We'll have a winner in a few minutes, I certainly hope, to Dave's Classic Corner. Thank you, Dave Boyden, for being a longtime supporter of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Follow Dave on Facebook on his personal page. He gets himself into some very, very interesting places, including swap meets, races, and so many other really cool things that Dave Boyden brings to you through his Facebook page. And, of course, AMS Racing, great place to buy your parts. Dave Boyden. Let's see what Dave's got for us this week as we walk around one of Dave's bikes. Dave.
Hi, this is Dave Boyden from AMS Racing, Phoenix, Arizona. This weekend I was lucky enough to go to the Mecum auction, and I was even luckier to have this thing come across the block. And I swore I wouldn't buy a bike, but my gosh. Close examination. This is not a restored bike in any way. If you know your bull tacos, this is the very first model of a 250 they ever made. The center port cylinder was actually made by Don Rickman because they were running a 200 with a side port in the British Scrambles, and he needed more power. So rather than cast it with the port out the side like all the others, they put the port in the center, which allowed them to put it in their Rickman frame. And that's what Bultaco Once Bultaco put the first order in for the bikes, Rickman told them that we hadn't made this many in 2 years. So we can't make the frames for you. So only some 20 real Rickmans, nickel-plated with non-folding pegs. They had British Hub Company rear hub, Girling shocks. This one has Baders. This one doesn't have a chrome rim. The first 1,000 of these had a chrome rim. They came with a knobby on the back and the Trials tire on the front. There's a TT model and a motocross, well, a TT and a Scrambles model. So one has the barbecue kind of radial sun-finned head. That's the motocrosser, and the other one has the straight fin. That's this one. Found out through the parts book that this one runs the TSS road race sleeve in it with about 1.5 points more compression with that straight fin head than the other head. Both have the same size carburetor. This bike has a different shaped exhaust. If you see the way this cover steps down right here, this is the shape the last cone in the motocross is. But the TT pipe is much longer. The other one stops about right here. TT pipe is long. That little hole is correct on both models. I guess maybe to hole on some muffler, but I don't know why. Because at that time, no mufflers were going to be required for another 5 years or so. That seat is original. I just did some cleaner on it. There you go. This is all gel coat, so this is the original finish. When do you find a bike from 1965 or 66 in this shape? I can't believe nobody outbidded us on this bike. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, they think all Bultacos need to be red and everything's polished and everything. But what an example of a correct bike. Has great compression and spark. This bike's been parked for a long time. Happy to have it. It's a Model 11, the 11th different bike that Bultaco had produced. Crazy. There you go. Bye-bye.
Great information from Dave Boysden, and we have somebody on the line with us right now. This is Joe Abbate. You're live on Vintage Motocross Q&A. Who am I speaking to? Doug Nemeth. The question was, who is this gentleman that is pushing Dave Bicker's bike?
And the answer is Roy Orbison.
Roy Orbison is exactly correct. And this question came to us from Roy Vanderveer, and I want to read the answer to this as well. Roy Orbison, he have a love of motorbikes, and he happened to be in the UK in 65 and 66. He enjoyed borrowing bikes to try out some scrambles at Hawkstone. He took the CZ on the track, but the event was infamous for its Hawkstone Park sand, a notoriously abrasive, damaging track that could ruin engines and injure riders as well. On that day, the sand proved disastrous for Orbison. He wiped out, broke his ankle during the ride. The incident became a notable anecdote in motocross circles, illustrating both Orbison's adventurous spirit and the dangers of the track's unforgiving circus. Doug Nemeth, you got it, brother.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Susie's going to get your address.
Thanks, Doug. Have a good night.
You know, I was looking up, we all know Roy Orbison's vision is not great. I thought the guy was blind. I looked it up today. He has very, very poor vision. He started losing that around when he was 4 years old. In 1964-65, while he was on stage, he forgot his regular glasses. He started wearing sunglasses, and he wore them ever since. But he is a big moto enthusiast and a heck of a talent as well. Roy Orbison is the answer. Roy Vanderveer came up with the question. Okay? All right. Congratulations, Doug Nemeth. We are going to move on now with the next segment, which is the What's It Worth segment. What's It Worth segment is brought to you by Full Circle Racing. All right? What's it worth? Tonight we're going to be looking at a 1970 Yamaha AT1 Enduro with a 175 kit. Very, very interesting little combination. I love little hybrid bikes like this. So let's see what it's worth. And this, of course, is the part of the show where I encourage you, the viewers at home, to guess how much you think this bike recently sold for. And Susie will have some type of gift to give you, whoever gets closest without going over. So let's get a look at the slideshow and I'll read to you what's going on. 1970 AT1 Enduro 125 was acquired new by its current owner, subsequently sold, reacquired, and thereafter refurbished circa 2015 and put on static display. The bike is finished in competition yellow with silver fenders. It is powered by a two-stroke single with a Wiseco 175 kit paired with a 5-speed transmission. Features include a Kickstarter or Mikuni carburetor, auto lube oil injection, an upswept exhaust system, a chrome braced handlebar, a solo seat, a skid plate, front and rear number plate. The AT1125 Enduro is now being offered at a no reserve on dealer consignment in California for off-road use only without a bill of sale, or with a bill of sale. The fuel tank and side panels were refinished under the current ownership in competition yellow with black accents, and the fenders refinished in silver with steel twin down tube frame in black at that time. Details include a black vinyl seat, skid plate, folding rubber covered foot pegs, front and rear white number plates, and a side stand. Out back, we've got an 18-inch wire spoke wheel. Up front, 19 inches with a mixed set of Metzlers and Dunlop knobby tires. Suspension consists of a conventional fork as well as dual preload adjustable shocks on the swing arm at the rear. 123cc two-stroke single received the 175 kit in the refurbishment according to the seller and is equipped with an auto lube oil injection and, as mentioned, Mikuni carburetor. Selling dealers state that the bike has spent approximately a decade on static display, and a start and ride video is found below. It was sold on Bring a Trailer. There was a video. I can't really download the videos here for us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. But there you have it. You saw all the pictures, a nice, tidy little ride. How much do you think this bike recently sold for? $1,500? $2,500? Let's see, we got some guesses here. We got $3,150. We've got $4,540. We've got $4,250. We've got $3,790. Phil Liberty, he must be doing really good out there, Phil. Look at him, $10,250. This bike sold for an incredibly low. You're not going to believe this. I mean, I couldn't believe it. This is a whole lot of fun for just $1,900.
Oh my God.
Sold a week ago, $1,900 for this little cutie right here, AT1125 with a 175cc kit on it. All right, there you have it. We're going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back with more Vintage Motocross Q&A. Stick around.
I'm Ron Lashid, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. We'll be right back.
I get asked often, what's the most important thing on Clunker? Answer's simple, it's me. That's why I use Full Circle Racing wheels prepped by Tom McAllister. So should you. Watch this and learn why. When racing vintage motocross where suspension is very limited, your wheels can be the difference between winning or serious injury. We chose to run Full Circle Racing wheels because of the super high quality materials and the heavy duty spokes used. Prepped by Tom McAllister, I have the confidence on the track to push way harder through the rough stuff and the bigger jumps, knowing my wheels are going to stay under me. Hey, Clunker may be 50 years old, but his wheels are brand new, and yours should be too. Call Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing today.
All right, thank you, Tom McAllister and Full Circle Racing. Visit them online at fullcircleracing.limited.com. I also want to thank Russell Waters, keeping everything slippery here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. AMSOIL, the first in synthetic since 1973. And if you want the deal of the century, 25% off AMSOIL products. Go to www.theoilpeople.shopamsoil.com. Russell Waters, thank you so much for all the products you send us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. Did you know? This is a segment that's put together by Jeff Kokoski, and this week we're going to be talking about Kian carburetors. So let's get down to our new slideshow, and we will get into the Did You Know segment by Jeff Kokoski. It is on Kian carburetors. Last week we talked about the history of Mikuni carburetors, one of the two major carburetor suppliers of the big four Japanese motorcycle brands. This week we'll discuss the second younger manufacturer. Did you know how Kian carburetors got their start? Well, it was 1936. In one of the industrial regions around Tokyo, Yutaro Takai began manufacturing industrial grinding wheels under the name Takayo Shokyo. And there's a picture of his factory right there. The company was known for its quality in making those grinding wheels as well as industrial diamond tools. By the mid-1940s, Takai changed the name to Heian Kagayo. to identify the Japanese region around Tokyo and Yokohama where the manufacturing plants were located at that time. The name is a combination of the second Japanese character in Tokyo, which can be read Kaio or Kai, as you see right here on the screen. In the second Japanese character of Yokohama, which can be read as Hama or Hin. Jeff Kokoski, you got me speaking a lot of different languages on this show the past couple of months or the past year or so. Anyway, with the need for cheap and efficient transportation in Japan after World War II, Soichiro Honda needed precision carburetors for his growing motorcycle business. In 1956, Takagi spun off the Kien Sakai Manufacturing Company for his grinder firm and started a lifelong business relationship with Honda that continues until this very day. By 1963, Kien was the mass-producing carburetors for Honda motorcycles as well as Honda automobiles. In 1970, amendments to the U.S. Clean Air Act forced automobile manufacturers to move away from leaded gasoline to reduce emissions from vehicle engines by the middle of the decade. In order to lower those emissions, automakers introduced catalytic converters, but it also created a catch-22 scenario. Cars equipped with catalytic converters could not burn leaded fuel. However, unleaded gas was still widely available. Honda, along with engineers in Kien development, compound vortex controlled combustion, or CVCC, the system consisted of a specialized 3-barrel carburetor that fed different air fuel mixtures simultaneously and enabled the CVC engine to run a lean mixture, and overall, while providing a small squirt of rich mixture to pre-combustion chamber, creating a high-velocity vortex that better mixed the fuel, thus allowing for clean, efficient combustion without catalytic converters. However, by the early 1980s, unleaded gasoline had started to become readily obtainable, and electronic fuel injection had become the norm on many automobiles. While the CVCC had been a start or a smart design for the time, other automotive technology improvements brought it to its obsolescence. In '82, Kien started to produce injector systems for automobiles, and by the end of the decade, they began to supply carburetors to KTM, which became a huge turning point in their business as the Austrian bikes began to dominate off-road competition. The two most popular styles of Kien carburetors for motocross and off-road are the PWK and FCR. The PWK is the simpler, less complex carburetor featured in a D-shaped throttle valve and power jet circuit that was better suited for two-strokes, while FCR is more complex and it is a flat-side carburetor. It does have smoother operation and, of course, bogs less. As a four-stroke motorcycle moved and fuel injection improved and two strokes to the throttle body or the transport port injection throughout the later 2000s, Kien developed a sophisticated injection system, or at least the components, to meet the needs of many Japanese and European motocross off-road bikes. They supplied the systems for street-oriented manufacturers like Triumph, even Harley-Davidson. Beyond fuel management systems for the power sports business today, Kien supplies an automotive industry with engine, transmission, and climate control products, including HVAC systems, compressors, valves, solenoids, and control units. On its own, Kien is a 20,000 employee business with revenues of up to $3 billion operating throughout the world. However, in early 2021, Kien merged with Showa Nissan and created the Astemo, which you just saw a picture of a moment ago. That's a $14 billion powerhouse. The name Astemo stands for Advanced Sustainable Technologies for Mobility, with factories and offices located throughout the world. Well, that is quite a story, Jeff. And Soichiro Honda, boy, that guy has had his hand in so many things. Of course, the name Honda speaks for itself between cars, generators, and motorcycles. But now, of course, Kien carburetors, and we've learned a little more about that as well. I want to thank Jeff Kokoski for the Did You Know segment. After all that talking, I will be in an oxygen tent for the next 3 minutes while we run the International Motocross Museum commercial. Oh, let's get right to that.
Grossi, you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A.
Motocross struck America, coming from Europe like a lightning bolt, striking the hearts and minds of people all across the country and the world. Battles of intense racing and cutting rivalries with loyalty to brands and heroes intensified as years of blood, sweat, and dirt flew through the minds of those memories of champions as they wrestled their machines through almost impossible tracks. But where are those past champions? And where are their bikes? Terry Good, an ex-pro motocross racer, has made it his life mission to honor these heroes and the bikes they rode to stardom. We raced, we rode, we lived and breathed motocross. Go back in time and relive those moments, now preserved for the first time ever in the world's first museum dedicated to the history of motocross. Our new building is in the gate. Help us get a great start and you can be part of history. Go to internationalmotocrossmuseum.org and become a part of our team.
International Motocross Museum is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization. Be sure to visit them online at internationalmotocrossmuseum.com. And as we wait patiently for that museum to open, you can get about as close as you're ever going to get to the bikes by going to the International Motocross Museum YouTube page. The hits and the people watching these videos that Terry Good have put together are absolutely incredible. Thank you, Terry Good. You ever heard of, this is a fun segment of the show. We bring up a bike that you may not have heard of, and I go through the Wikipedia and things like that over time. And this week I have discovered a bike called a Zenith motorcycle. Have you ever heard of a Zenith motorcycle? I certainly did not before this. So let's get a look at this. Zenith were always keen to promote themselves via competition. Freddie Barnes competed on one regularly in his own machines in 1909 to 1913. In 1922, it was the Zenith that was the first British machine to do 100 miles an hour in one lap of the Brooklyn circuit, that's Brooklands circuit, with rider Bert Van Vleck. In 1925, Zenith held a record for a number of over 100-mile-per-hour laps at the bumpy Brooklyn circuit. Works rider Joseph Wright helped the lap record at Brooklands from 1925 to 1935. Zenith held the motorcycle world speed record in two occasions. The first, the FIM record of 124 miles an hour with Owen M. Baldwin in Arpaillon, France, the site of the Autodrome. Bert Levac surpassed Baldwin the following year on a 995cc Bro Superior at the same location. In 1930, Zenith was in financial trouble due to the recession and were taken over by one of their dealers' riders of South London. The ex-Zenith works rider Joe Wright, riding an OEC of 994cc's with a Jap engine, took back the record on August 31st at 137 miles an hour. But the record was broken twice more in 1930. First by Ernest Jacob Henn, riding a supercharged BMW at 137.85 at Ingslot, Germany. Claude Temple made arrangements to try and win the title back in Cork, Ireland, using his supercharged OEC, again with Joe Wright on board. Joe Wright managed to acquire the works 995cc supercharged Jap engine Zenith, and he took this to Ireland as a spare machine. And he tow started, and he actually did set the record that day. The OEC bike suffered a mechanical failure. It was not able to compete in both runs, but it did break a record in one run. But of course, they don't really count that. You got to do it going both ways. And that is a Zenith motorcycle. Now you could say you have heard of the Zenith. Okay? All right, let's get on a little bit more vintage motocross Q&A. We've got announcements. The announcements are brought to you by the International Motocross Museum. Susie's raising her hand over here. She's got something she wants to tell me. You got some things you want to give away, Sus? Okay, why don't we do that, and then we will get on with the announcements. What do you got, Sue?
I have for viewer appreciation tonight is Robert Burrows.
Robert Burrows.
Robert Burrows.
What did he win?
Well, I think I'm going to send him a mud scraper.
Robert Burrows, you got to get us your address so we can get you the mud scraper.
Yep.
And nobody came close to the.
No.
Okay.
Not even
to the little AT1. No, there was some high bids up there. And we got the Doug Nemeth was the winner for tonight's trivia,
Roy Orbison, right.
which was Roy Orbison. We're going to get on with the announcements right now.
Yep.
Hey, guys, you want to really help support the show and get something cool? get a shirt like this for $24.95. They come in yellow, black, and gray. You can get it in the vintage logo, the Vintage Motocross Q&A logo, or the classic Kurt Evans cartoon logo. All right. We also have hats, $22 shipping included. And we have aprons too. Let's get a picture of that, Sue, so I can have that on next week. Here is a picture of the QR codes if you want to send Susie the money, and I will never see it. However, if you want to pay by PayPal, you can send that to joemoto43@gmail.com.
And I'll never see it.
And then Susie will never see it. Okay? So there you have it. You can take a picture of that. You got your QR codes, and get yourself a shirt. It would be a huge help to the show. Getting closer, just a few weeks away. The CZ World Championship race, Marysville, California, 24th through the 26th. It's a 3-day event. Friday, you got practice. Saturday, you got the bike show, vintage and post-vintage, mini and 100s. And Sunday, the CZ World Championship. All right? I will be there, and we will be bringing you coverage here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. Debbie Burnworth carrying on Scott's legacy. They got the Carlsbad reunion coming up on Sunday, May 31st. I will be there. Susie doesn't know that yet, but we are definitely going to this one way or the other. I haven't been there for, I think this would be the second year. So I really don't want to miss it. That happens at Blues Brothers on Progress Street in beautiful Vista, California. Shortly after that, Sunday, June 14th, the first round of the SoCal MX Classic round that happens at Verona MX. All right, we are going to jump right into, you know what? I'm going to go into this week in motocross history. Okay, this week in motocross history. Then we're going to run the replica motorcycle parts commercial. Then we're going to come back with the rest of Gordon McCapper's welding video, which I thought was just outstanding. Okay, so this week in motocross history is brought to you by Racer X. Be sure to visit them online at racerx.com. All right. 1952, Gary Jones was born. He will go on to become one of the top riders in the early years of American motocross, finishing a top 10 American in 1971 in the Inter-Am Series, then winning the 1972 National Championship, and that put 3 altogether, 72, 3, and 4. The championship trophy for the 250 class in Lucas Oil belongs to Gary Jones. His name is on the cup. 85 over in France, U.S. rider Danny Magoo Chandler won the 500cc Grand Prix. His one and only win in his 85 season in Europe. It's only Magoo's second race on the KTM after rocketing to fame as a Mako rider, then Suzuki 125 pilot, and finally as a Honda factory rider. Finishing behind Chandler were the mighty HRC factory trio of Thorpe, Gabors, and Malherbe. 1997, in a wild night at the infield at Charlotte Motor Speedway, Team Yamaha's Kevin Windham, the points leader in the 125 West region, jumped on a 250, scored his first 250 win in Supercross. In doing so, Windham became the first rider in the 12-year history of the 125 class in Supercross to win in a cameo event. His teammate Ezra Lusk finished second as the teammates reversed their finishing order from the previous week at Pontiac. Okay? We said we're going to take one more commercial break. We are going to do that, and then we'll be back with Gordon's video. Okay, we'll be right back with more vintage motocross Q&A.
Hi, I'm Paul Parkinson with Replica Motorcycle Parts. I'm sitting here with our test bike, which is ridden by Jerry Maddox. It carries the #1 plate in the U.S. Let's go over a couple of the parts that we've got on here. We've got our ignition cover with the case saver built into it, so that when the chain comes off, you're not damaging your cases. Spacer, foot pegs. Jerry runs our air box. Seat brackets, keeps the seat on tight so he doesn't fall off when he's going over the whoops. And then this side, Jerry runs a couple little things, a lot of little rubber parts on the bike, and that stuff are all done by us. And then down here we've got our brake pedal, which has got needle bearings in there, and then it's got a wider toe peg, so it gives them a real nice, clean, easy to use brake. And then this is our latest part. This is a CR250 type knuckle. In fact, Honda used them on the last versions of the MR175, and this is a real trick aluminum Kickstarter arm. So that gives them lightweight, strength, and reliability more than anything else.
ReplicaMotorcycleParts.com. Thank you, Paul Parkinson Sr., for your support here for us at Vintage Motocross Q&A. As promised, we're going to bring you the second half of the Gordon McCapper video. I have it right here. Stopped it right where we left off a little bit earlier in the show. After the McCapper video, we will wrap up Vintage Motocross Q&A. But right now, let's
Or
get
fish-eyed the end of that tube so it would fit up against the tube inside there.
And when you say fish-eyed, you're talking about?
Yeah, the little cope so that's,
right.
it fits up against the curvature of the other tube.
Right. Like we see those nice, neat little fish eyes or cutouts or whatever you want to call them on.
Yep.
Your more expensive bicycles, you see stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that what you're seeing there is the weld, okay, where it's all, I think it's basically welded up before we put that reinforcement plate on the outside. And you might notice in that picture there is like what we call a plug weld. You see that little round circular weld? It's kind of like on the left side, close to the outer frame tube.
Yeah.
That's what we call a plug weld. So there was a hole drilled. There's a hole drilled in the tube. So you're filling a hole, but the inner sleeve is behind that. So your weld is actually penetrating into that inner sleeve.
Gotcha.
Which gives it more strength. You can see it. There you go. It's right on the top of that one.
Yeah, that's a good shot of it right there.
Yeah.
And you know what, Gordon, I want to bring up the fact that the way you make this repair with the sleeve and you weld it, that's the proper way of doing it, obviously. But this is something that is done also in something that is critical in race cars, which is the roll bar.
Right. Yep. Anytime you're splicing tubing, it's good to use a sleeve.
Okay.
Even like a lot of in this area, central New York, there's dirt track car racing is pretty big, and so those guys are, banging into each other and they're replacing, parts of the frame all the time. And that's the correct way to do it. That picture there is showing that reinforcement piece.
Yeah, that's a really good picture of it.
Yeah. Before it was welded on.
Gordon, quickly, and I know well, let me just ask. A guy needs a frame repaired. He doesn't know the welder in the town where he lives. What are the questions he should be asking when he goes there?
Well, that's a great question, Joe, because there's all kinds of welders out there. Okay. And I hate to say this, but
no, you gotta say it because we gotta give him the
Yeah. So there's like a lot of guys out there, they could be young kids, they could be, a little older, whatever. But you can go to Harbor Freight, nothing against Harbor Freight. I use some of their stuff. You can go buy a welder for $200 and might be like a flux core machine, a wire feeder that uses a gasless flux core. And then, they have those machines have their place. Okay. They have their place, but there are people that go out and buy those and, they might have, almost no experience. They put an ad on Marketplace or something that they do welding. That's not the guy you want to bring your motorcycle frame to. Absolutely not.
Gotcha.
I would, like I said, back when I learned how to weld.
Yes.
A common way to learn how to weld back then was gas welding, oxyacetylene. Okay. And that is still a viable process. Okay. And if all I had was a tank of acetylene and a tank of oxygen and a torch, I could do these repairs with a gas setup. And there's actually, nothing wrong with that. Okay. Back then, these cheap little MIG welders just weren't common, back in the 70s, early 80s, whatever. But the price of MIG welders has come down a lot, where people can get into a MIG welder really cheap. And those are actually good for certain kinds of repairs. And I own several MIG welders. Okay. They have their place, but like I said, my preference for motorcycle frames is the TIG process. It's just your highest quality weld, and I'm old and I'm set in my ways.
Even your stands here, Gordon, which are fabulous. I've got two of them for over 22 years. Even those are all TIG welded.
Yeah, so my bike stands are made in precision fixtures. So they're all identical. If you order one from me 10 years ago and you order one today, it's going to be the exact same,
Right.
measurements, whatever.
Right.
So, but yes,
Unlike our pants from 10 years ago, which
exactly.
do not fit us.
Yes. So, I do TIG weld my bike stands. And
Okay.
I'm probably crazy for doing that because if I MIG welded them, it's a faster process to do. MIG is made for production welding, and it would be a lot faster if I MIG welded them, but I really like the look of the TIG weld. And and I think my customers appreciate that too.
They do.
They're TIG welded, and it takes more time, but again, I've had jobs in my life, working for major corporations as a welder. And I've been certified in MIG welding. I've been certified in most of the processes, but it's the thing about welding is and I'll get back to your question about how do you pick a welder. I don't want to go off on a big tangent, but all the different weld processes. Part of the thing of being an experienced welder is knowing which process to use for the different jobs because they're all different. Like I'm New York State DOT certified to weld on bridges. Okay. But that's stick welding. You wouldn't TIG weld a bridge. It's just, you know what I'm saying? No, it's not. It's just, if you want to weld on like DOT projects in New York State, the test is stick welding. And it's the sample test piece that you have to do is X-rayed in the New York State DOT lab in the state capitol, and that's how you get certified to do that. But again, that is a very specific thing. So you're going to stick weld it. Motorcycle frames, my preference is TIG. If I didn't have a TIG welder, my next choice might be gas welding with a torch. And I can do that.
Gordon, going back to our roots way back in the 70s. And I say our roots when I talk about the sport of motocross. I mean, the factory guys or the boxman era, that's what they had. And I don't care if it was Roger DeCosta or Tony DeStefano or whoever it was. When they cracked the frame or there was something that needed to be done, it was done with gas. So,
exactly. And, I don't know how much time you want me to take up, Joe, but if I could tell you a quick story about that.
Gordon, we've already gone 21 minutes. We've done a show.
All right.
Well, I'll tell you what. How about I have you come back, and we'll talk more about different types of welding. And now that we have a little feel for this, we can talk more about more common repairs because I know you've built some aluminum swing arms for hill climbers.
I have extended aluminum swing arms for hill climbers.
Yeah.
I actually built from scratch, and again, I don't do this all the time. I do a lot of different things, but I built from scratch, and I'll get you pictures of these things. I made an slightly extended 2 inches extension, aluminum swing arm for a Suzuki 1972 Suzuki GT 750 Water Buffalo, the 3-cylinder 2-stroke water cooled street bike.
Yes.
And I have pictures of that. That bike is done. It belongs to another guy that I know. But yeah, I do aluminum, steel, stainless. I do cast iron. I do some little bit of cast iron, but it's not something I go looking for. It's a pain in the butt, But anyway, get back to the original question. Picking a welder. You can ask the guy. If I was not a welder and I had to have somebody else do it, I would definitely ask some questions. Like what's your qualifications? Where have you worked? What have you done? Things like that. Look, can I see? Do you have any examples of your work? I mean, I know when I do a job. I mean, I post a lot of my stuff on Facebook, jobs that I've done with my welding business, in the past week, I repaired an ornamental, pretty fancy aluminum gate. There was an entrance to a house that was hit with a snowplow. That was an aluminum job. Yesterday, I installed a handrail at an apartment complex. So I do all kinds of stuff. But I take pictures of all my work. Not every job, but I take pictures of a lot of my jobs. So like, if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, have you ever done this?" I go on my phone and I can show them a picture. Yes, I have done that.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has the ability to do that these days. I do it just about every day with my gas tank work or whatever it may have been. Gordon, I got to jump for right now. I want to thank you for coming in. Gordon McCaffer has been here answering some questions about frame repairs and MIG welding, TIG welding, and what you should maybe ask as far as someone in your area being qualified to make a repair on your next race bike. Okay, Gordon, you come back, we'll talk, but thank you for sharing the time with us right now. All right, man?
Thanks for having me, Joe. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Gordon. Thank you.
Take care. Yep.
There you have it, Gordon McCaffer. That's a wrap at Vintage Motocross Q&A for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. I think it was very, very informative. I want to especially thank Jeff Kokoski, Dave Boydston, Gordon McCaffer, and did I say Roy Vanderveer? I don't think I did, but I do want to thank Roy as well. Susie went inside. Hey, Gino! Gino! He won't come back out. That's it for Vintage Motocross Q&A. We will see you next time. Thanks for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.